Okay, so let's get into it. So my name's Austin Olney. Like John said, I'm the digital media specialist at the library. And so what we're looking at today, what I want to do is basically give you the tech trends of the modern teens that are out there. All right, they're called Generation Z right now. So I'm going to explain what that means and how that works in all these terms relating to the different generations that they've come up with. And there's two main fields that I want to talk about. That's the field of gaming and social media. And so represented by basically Fortnite and TikTok, respectively. Like I said before at the beginning, if you can understand Fortnite and TikTok, you have a good understanding of what the kids are up to, at least when it comes to technology. And if you understand what they're up to when it comes to technology, then you pretty much understand the generation, because they're all about the technology these days, especially in the past couple of years, as we all know, doing a lot of things virtually. Then I'm going to talk about some of the issues that they face relating to these technologies and give you some tips if you want them. And like I said, we'll do a Q&A after that. So this is basically the map of what I'm going to be talking about. And so let's just jump right into it. So like I said, what I want to do first is talk about the different generations. These are loosely defined ways of looking at the different age groups. Basically, in the 20th century, you got the Lost Generation, Greatest Generation, which is basically the World War II generation, Silent Generation, and then Baby Boomers, which is people born, there's set years for each of these generations. So the Baby Boomers are, at least according to Wikipedia, those born between 1946 and 1964. So it's basically like every 20 years or so, they have a different classification of a quote unquote generation. After the Baby Boomers, you got Generation X, which is basically people born in the late 60s and the 1970s. And then we get into the kids today. So, well, kids. Generation Y, also known as the millennials, are people born between the 80s and the early 90s. Like I said, it depends on where you're getting your sources of information. The years may vary, but generally speaking, it's the 80s and early 90s for the millennials. So I am a millennial because I was born in 1986. And so a lot of the millennial, I mean, I'm 35 at this point. So millennials are adults now. And then you have Generation Z, and after Generation Z, the little kids today are Generation Alpha. So my kids would be Generation Alpha. All right, so what we're looking at today is the in-between Generation Y and Generation A, essentially. Generation Z, also known as the Zoomers, all right, today's teens. And so these are kids born between 1997 and 2012. Like I said, we're going to be looking at the technology when it comes to this generation. So most of the time, they're going to be doing a lot of their tech consumption on smartphones. So whether it's an Android or an iPhone, that's the majority of where they are going to be spending their digital time. Not all kids have a smartphone, which I'm going to talk about. That's something that I'll get into. But you'll see a lot of kids with smartphones these days in Generation Z. I'm a millennial. I did not have, I mean, I got a cell phone when I was in high school. So that was like 2002, and it was not a smartphone. So there's definitely a difference with, there's a difference in the world that these kids are growing up with, for sure. I mean, the oldest member of Generation Z was born in 1997. The internet was well established by 1997. So it's crazy to think about what kind of world that they grew up with, or what they're growing up in. Okay, so let's look at some of the more traditional means of entertainment that they might be into. So most of these kids are not watching cable TV. that they're not, they've cut the cord, so to speak. They've never even really had a cord to cut. They pretty much always had streaming services available, generally speaking. What they're going to be into when it comes to, let's say, movies or TV, there's all kinds of different streaming services out there. A lot of the kids are into Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu. These are the big ones. And that's for consumption. So if they want to watch a movie or TV show, they're going to use a streaming service like that, generally speaking. And if they're going to listen to something, a lot of times they'll use an app like Spotify, which has all kinds of different music on it that you can stream, as well as podcasts and more, but it's mainly an audio consumption platform. Okay, so that's the traditional way of them getting content. So it's a one-way street. They're just pulling content in. They're watching, they're listening. It's just information coming in. Okay. Then we move on to gaming, and gaming is more of a two-way street where you're playing with someone. There's someone on the other end of your screen when you're playing something like multiplayer, and it's more of a give and take sort of a thing. But it's definitely for entertainment. So it does fall within entertainment. It's just not as traditional as before. And there's all kinds of different gaming devices out there. Again, a lot of these kids are going to be using their smartphones if they have them for gaming. So whether it's an Android or an iPhone, they'll download the game right to their phone. But there's plenty of other devices out there. Of course, you got consoles like PlayStation and Xbox or Nintendo. And then they can play on a regular computer like a laptop or a desktop, and that's just fine. If they're lucky, a kid would have access to a virtual reality headset, and they can play games that way as well. And when it comes to VR, virtual reality, there's two main brands that are out there. You got Oculus and HTC. So Oculus is owned by Facebook, and Facebook is going all in with VR. If you've heard of the metaverse, that's a whole other class that I should probably put together, but there's so many ideas, way more ideas than I have time for. But VR, the point is some kids get into VR, but not all kids. It's not that big just yet, but just wait till the metaverse comes around. One thing you might hear, one of the terms you might hear is crossplay. And that's the idea. This is a new idea that's very cool, where kids can basically, with a lot of these games, they can play on one device and play with another kid on a completely different device, but be playing the same game in the same world with them. So one kid, for example, could be on an iPhone, sitting on a train playing a game, who is linked up with a kid who's playing at home, sitting on their couch on a PlayStation. And then at the same time, the two of them are playing with someone on a laptop, I don't know, at school or something. But the point is they're using different devices to access the very same digital world and play together. There's tons of different games out there. I could not get into the amount of different games there are. So I'll talk about some of the big ones, like Among Us is a big one right now. And that's basically a 2D game where there's a mole and the kids are trying to figure out, who the mole is. And, it's all for fun. All of this is just for fun, obviously. I mean, it's gaming. Kids like to play games, go figure. Just the difference is nowadays it's digital. So when I was growing up, Legos was a big thing, but now the parallel, I guess, to Legos, it would be Minecraft. So Minecraft is like the modern day Legos. So kids aren't necessarily playing with Legos. Actually, that's a bad example. Kids are still playing with Legos, I'm sure. At least my kids are. But there's much more of a possibility for kids to play with, let's say, it's possible for them to build in a digital world these days, way more than before. With something like Minecraft, there's many different ways you can play the game, but one of the big things about Minecraft is that it's creative. So you have these building blocks, these digital building blocks that you can build things, and it's really not unlike building things with Legos. And it's actually a pretty good comparison, because the Lego universe, there's so many different ways you can play with Legos, whether it's following instructions or just throwing the pieces on the floor and building something freestyle. Minecraft is the same way. There's many different game modes, but it's a good representative of the different games that are out there. So it's a very creative game. Roblox is creative in a completely different way, because Roblox isn't just one game. Roblox is a whole library of games. Roblox is thousands, probably millions of games that are all user created. So every single game that's on Roblox is a game that was created by someone else, which is really interesting. So it's getting kids into game design and coding and you name it. If by the way, if a kid can make a video game, they're going to be developing all sorts of different digital skills. A video game is basically the culmination of several different digital fields coming together under one umbrella. So Roblox, if a kid can make a Roblox game, they're you know, I would say it's a good thing. Obviously there's pros and cons, but I'll have to do a class on Roblox. Okay, so Fortnite. Obviously we've all heard of Fortnite. This is the big one. This is the game that's particularly popular right now. I mean, there's so many games out there. There's so many games that are popular. Fortnite has died down a little bit, but it's still a major cultural force when it comes to Generation Z. So you might hear the term Battle Royale, which is a genre of games. And Fortnite is like the flagship Battle Royale game. It's not the first one. It's just the game that popularized Battle Royale. And what Battle Royale is if you've ever seen the Hunger Games, it's basically that idea, but in video game form. So you have a bunch of kids that drop into a world. Kids, it's really all ages. Whoever's playing Fortnite, they all jump into a world. It's usually like 60 players, all go into some sort of multiplayer world, and they're dropped in with nothing. So they parachute onto this island, and it's basically a fight for survival, and the last one standing wins. So the idea is to land and to collect resources and attempt to eliminate all of the other players and be the last one left. That's Battle Royale in its most simple sense. Survival of the fittest, let's say. And what I'll do is play a quick video, which is a trailer for Fortnite. Okay, so yeah, like I said, Fortnite's all the rage. And it's one of the big games when it comes to esports. You might have heard this term as well. And esports stands for electronic sports. It's basically professional gamers. And this actually isn't something new. It started in the 90s with a game called Quake, where people started playing digitally, competitively, and winning large prizes because of it. So basically, a kid can actually become good at a particular game like Fortnite and make a career out of it. The problem is it's extremely unlikely. It's just like, you know, a kid technically could get good at football and join the NFL, but it's not a particularly likely career path for the average kid. So lots of kids out there want to be pro gamers, but it's just not going to happen. The level that the professionals are playing are there really is a skill level. It's really crazy to watch these kids play. And I say kids because a lot of times the professional gamers are that Generation Z age. They're 16 to 24. I guess at 24 you start losing all your reflexes. So I've completely aged out of the pro gaming age category. So most of these pro gamers in the esports world are very young. They're teenagers. But they're winning millions of dollars and they're serious. There's teams. It's just like any professional sport where you dedicate your life to this thing. And I first heard about esports when a kid won a Fortnite tournament in 2017. He won, I think, $3 million, which is wild. So I say all this because you might see teens these days sitting at a computer and it looks like they're playing a game, but what they're really doing is watching someone else play a game. You say, like, why would you do that? I've asked myself that, like, why do you want to watch a kid play a game? And once I got into it more, I realized that, oh, they're watching a professional play a lot of the times, and they're learning by watching. It's just like, a football player watching an NFL game. You could say to the football player, why don't you just go out and play football? It's like, no, I want to watch the professionals. I want to see how, I want to see the top level of this sport. Same thing with esports. So if you see a kid playing watching a video game, chances are they're learning is the reason. Another term you might hear out there when it comes to gaming is free to play. So a lot of these games are quote unquote free to play, which means the games are freely available. Anyone can download them and play them as long as they have the hardware necessary. By the way, Fortnite, you can pretty much play on any device. So they download the game, they just basically make an account and they can play the game for free. Fortnite is free. You don't have to pay a dime. But where these companies make their money, companies like Epic, who makes Fortnite, they offer the players to purchase items in their in the game. So they're called microtransactions. So a lot of kids want to buy different costumes within the game. They're called skins. And so, oh, I want to look like I don't know, Spider-Man running around in Fortnite. So you'll see, if you play Fortnite, you'll see Spider-Man like running around. And that is a kid who used his parents' credit card to purchase a Spider-Man costume within the game. And so that's where that term free to play comes from. It's free to play, but you can pay for essentially costumes and different skins for different items. These are multi-billion-dollar industries. So it works. And that's the new, essentially the modern day monetary system within games is free to play. Okay, moving on, because there's only so much I can spend on this particular topic. Okay, so let's go to communication. So standard communication, how does Gen Z, how do Generation Z kids talk to each other? I keep saying kids, but I should say teens. Kids would be Generation Alpha. So how do Gen Z teens talk to each other? Like John alluded to before, email is not high on their list of communication. Yes, they can communicate via email. They understand the concept. They can send an email. But they're not particularly inclined to do, to communicate that way. Phone calls, same thing. They'll FaceTime you, do a video call with you before they pick up a phone and call you. It's pretty interesting. So how do they communicate? They are definitely communicating. The question is, how do they do it? A lot of times it's texting, whether it's the default text messaging app on their Android or iPhone, or another app like Kik or Signal. These are two different apps that offer a level of privacy, but also offer a level of anonymity for the users. So that brings risks, because on something like Kik, you don't know for sure who you're talking to on Kik. So I would encourage parents to make sure they know what their kids, how their kids are communicating when it comes to texting, because who knows who they're talking to, especially, a parent might not even know that there's these other apps. The parent could pick up their phone and look at their, the text message app and say, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. I see what kinds of conversations they're having. Actually, I don't know what the barrier is for that. Is that frowned upon? I don't know. I don't have teens, but they might not know to look at an app like Kik or Signal, where the quote unquote real conversations might be having. So it's just a level. It's another layer that these kids use to text with one another. Okay, and then of course there is video conferencing. I mean, literally the generation is being known as the Zoomers, especially because of the last 2 years with the amount of kids doing virtual classes over Zoom and just communicating that way. So all kinds of different video conferencing apps. Zoom is the big one. There's also audio conferencing apps like Discord, where you can communicate with another person just with audio, just with voice chat. And so Discord is the big one when it comes to that. It's basically a way to communicate. This is like their version of the phone, Discord. Now, text chat. This is one thing I wanted to talk about. Text chat is what the kids prefer. What I have found is text chat within apps is like their favorite thing to do. So something like Roblox. Within Roblox, you can type messages to each other. And I found it really interesting. It kind of clicked in my mind when I was doing, I've done different Zoom sessions with teens and Roblox. And I found a lot of times I'm trying to talk to them and it's like I'm talking to a void, you know. It's like there's no give and take with these kids. It's not a presentation either. It's like I'm trying to play in these worlds with them, and it's like it's kind of awkward. Then I realized, oh, they're responding to me, but they're responding in the Roblox chat. And so once I figured that, I was like, oh, I'm old. And so I got to start using their communication methods. And so then I started using the Roblox chat, and then I basically, it would be like a mute Zoom session, but we'd be talking so much. So that was something that I learned. Obviously, there's communication issues with this, where these kids don't necessarily feel comfortable speaking. They're more comfortable with texting and chatting that way. It can be used as a crutch. And there's all kinds of issues associated with that. But let's go ahead and move on to social media. Okay, so social media is it's a way, it is a communication method. It's kind of like, it has communication methods and then some. It's like a larger way of communicating. It's like a global way of communicating. You can have those private one-on-one conversations, which these kids do, but in addition to that, you can also have conversations on a large scale. So some of the big ones out there, there's Snapchat, which is a way of sending photos and videos to one another. The interesting thing about Snapchat is they time out. So there's that. Instagram is basically the same idea, except the photos and videos do not time out. Instagram is basically Facebook for photos and videos. And the kids aren't really, generally speaking, into Facebook these days because their parents are on Facebook a lot of the time. So they're just not interested. They're interested in anything where their parents aren't, generally speaking. Then there's Twitter, which is all about status updates, where you've heard of tweets, and really all of these social media, in one way or another, have status updates, and in one way or another they have a way to follow someone or subscribe to someone. That's what makes it a social media. Basically, the idea of you're consuming information and you can provide information. Something like YouTube. YouTube is all user-generated videos. So you can watch videos on YouTube. You can also upload videos to YouTube. That's what makes it a social media. It's a give and take. People on YouTube are YouTubers. And you might notice if you use YouTube, there's this new thing called Shorts. And that's really short videos. It's basically YouTube's response to TikTok, which has really blown up in the past few years. It's interesting. I did a social media class with John a few years back, and I mentioned TikTok in it. I was like, oh, there's this new app that's big in China. And I had never heard of it. And it's funny to think like how much it's grown since then. TikTok is a household name at this point. So what I'm going to do is play a quick video explaining what TikTok is all about. Okay, and whether it's gaming or social media, you're going to have what's called influencers. And these are people that are very popular in the social media or gaming world, and they can actually move some product, as it were. So a lot of times companies will use someone who's big on social media to sell a product. It's kind of like in the 80s when Michael Jordan was really big in the basketball world, and Nike, he teamed up with Nike to sell a bunch of shoes. All right, and that continues to this day. So you can think of Michael Jordan in the 80s as sort of like a pre-internet influencer. That's basically the idea. All right, and then on gaming and social media, you have the idea of live streaming, and that's where, it's live. So you have a camera feed, kind of like this. This is live, I guess, in a way. But a lot of times the professional gamers will stream their videos and, we'll stream them playing a game, and in the social media world, someone will maybe do some sort of live video where they're communicating with their audience. Okay, so issues. So many issues when it comes to technology. A lot of times, what it comes down to is self-esteem. So these kids are seeing, when it comes to social media, let's say, they're seeing everyone present themselves in such a way that it looks great. I mean, who's gonna uh, post on social media about how horrible their life is? I mean, actually, maybe they will, but generally speaking, these teens are seeing everyone's like perfect picture of their life, and this probably goes beyond Generation Z. This is more of a societal issue right now. Is all these people portraying their lives, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So you get you get a misconception of what their life is actually like. It's kind of like the advertisement of a Big Mac versus the reality of a Big Mac. And so self-esteem is affected by these kids who are on social media, especially when you combine it with things like cyberbullying, where kids are basically picking on one another. And there's levels of technical details to it, where they could unfriend each other, and that could ruin a relationship because of what they did in an app. It's crazy. So you got an online reputation. You could have a kid who has some kind of video that goes viral, and that can affect their life. There was the Star Wars kid back in like the early 2000s, if you remember that, the video of the kid playing with a lightsaber, and he ended up having to change schools because he was bullied so much because of that video that went viral. It's just a funny video, but it actually really negatively affected his life. All right. Then you have the idea of kids that are too invested with their devices. They're getting too much screen time. They're getting addicted. They're getting cyberbullied. All of this stuff. And then you have kids that aren't a part of it at all. And that's the digital divide, where these kids do not have access. They might not have a smartphone, like I said before, and then therefore they can't join the party. And so that's an issue that they have to deal with, completely separate issues. So I could do a whole class on the issues, but I'm running out of time here. So let's just wrap things up and get to the Q&A. So I wanted to end on a positive note and say there are good things. There are some good things when it comes to all this technology. There's so many different ways for kids to be creative. I mentioned that Roblox, you can make games and be creative that way with something like Roblox Studio. A lot of these games allow you to, there's games that literally the goal is to make a game. And so, and then when it comes to social media, there's, kids making, a kid that wants to put a video on TikTok usually is going to edit that video. And so they're learning those skills. So lots of different ways to be creative. And let me just quickly go through some tips, and then we'll get to the Q&A. Basically, my advice for staying in the know is to obviously just to be curious. If you actually want to know what these kids are into, they're happy to tell you about it. If you sit down with a kid and talk about what they're interested in, if a kid's into Fortnite and you sit there and say, like, can you explain Fortnite to me? They would be happy to explain Fortnite to you. They would be more than happy. But also there's plenty of information on YouTube. I have a nephew who's all into this stuff. I pick his brain all the time. And of course, I sometimes work in the teen center here at the library, and that's another avenue for me to learn. Using their communications, like I said before, once I figured out that they like to text more than they like to video speak, then I learned a better way to connect with them, but it depends on the kid. And so just basically dive in is my general piece of advice. Okay, so that was a lot of content, and I probably should have given myself more time, so sorry about that. But let's go ahead and get to some of your questions. How does that sound? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. And I'm going to start looking at the chat. Okay, let's see.
Snapchat. Austin, we baby boomer people also don't always chat on Zoom. They just ask questions. So
okay, right. Yeah, that works out.
So why don't we just, Austin, open it up and go around and see, get some feedback or any questions, if that's fair.
I'll actually refer to what I put in the chat.
Here you go, David.
So if you want to go back and read it with me, I don't know, does reading and all the video stuff go together? You know, that it seems to be a sort of an opposite kind of thing going on. The more you have to read, the less you want to do it. So you do anything video or non-reading or non-writing or non-typing. At any rate, that's another thing. So what I wrote was that gaming is the only thing my mentee does. I asked him what game I should download to play with him and that he could teach me. And after he stopped laughing, he said he would. I'll find out tonight when we meet through FaceTime. Which is interesting because the way he holds his camera, and I've noticed with a couple of kids, the only thing you ever see is this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't understand that part. Maybe you can clue me in on that. So at any rate, I told him that in return for that, if and when we can meet live, I'm actually going to teach him how to play chess, which I think he will really find interesting. Mental exercise.
Sure.
He also wants to build a game. But unfortunately, is not in school right now, so can't learn how to code.
Well, as long as he has access to YouTube, I mean, there's plenty of content on YouTube alone where he could learn how to make a game. I would start with something like Scratch. You know, if he can work with Scratch and make a 2D game, that's a great starting point. Or Roblox. You know, there's plenty of videos out there to learn how to make a Roblox game.
Okay, I'll tell him about that if he doesn't already know.
Yeah. And as far as like what, you know, the kids not pointing their phones in the right direction, I think a lot of this stuff, it just comes down to being socially awkward. They're not taught this stuff. And, you know, no one said to them like, you know, fix your camera. But even if you did say that, they'd say no, and they'd shut it off. You know, I don't really have an answer for how to fix that.
It's interesting because, you know, every now and then I said, you know, hi, nice to see the top of your head again. And I'll see his eyes squint up and maybe he'll change the angle so I actually see a little laugh, but then he goes right back to it. I just think they're so accustomed to holding it like at waist level.
Sure.
That, you know, and they don't obviously have a stand for it. So it's like awkward to hold it all the way up here where you could actually be seen. So it's just comfortable to keep it down there. So
right.
You just deal with it.
Right.
Let's get some other feedback. Dean, how about you? You're on mute.
This is fascinating. My grandchildren, I think the oldest is 9 or whatever, but you know, when we come to visit them, the mother has to really take away their devices to get their attention. Now it's crazy. My wife and I, it's like we're fighting for their attention, because if they have their devices in front of them, they seem to just zoom into it. And you know, and so I jotted down some of your advices. I need to get more involved in learning what they're actually doing. And like you said, they're very anxious to explain it to me. However, I get bored. So I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to readjust my thinking and get more involved in what they're involved in to stay up. But thank you for this presentation. It definitely has enlightened me, and I have to transmit some of this information to my wife so we can to get attention to our grandchildren.
So I'm wondering whether we should have a subgroup of gamers. Where we can learn whatever, Fortnite, what have you, and give it a shot.
Interesting idea. Yeah.
You just might like
Great
it.
suggestion, John.
John, I'll tell you what my kid recommends.
Okay.
Good. And like I said, after he stopped laughing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Now, I have a quick question related to the intergenerational aspect of what we're trying to do here, Austin. So is there a way to create tournaments within a bounded community? So maybe we could have a grandpa and a teen be a team and and have a Fortnite competition. Is that something that
Yeah, you could do that.
because we can pretty much let the kid can do a lot of it, and then it's just an opportunity to kind of have a joint experience, even while the grandma's like, yeah, get this one, that one. They don't have to necessarily play on the controls. They just being there with the young person and kind of being part of a team. So is that something that can be done? Can you set up a 10-person, or a 10-team, sub event on these games, like a little mini community?
Yes. Yep. In Fortnite, for example, you could set up your own server, and there's different ways you could do it, but you could play in the same world together and compete, and that could be fun.
So we can create like a grandpa world, and well, that's a way to kind of keep pulling them in.
Absolutely. I love the
Wait. So grandpa world to go from doctor's office to doctor's office?
Let me ask Chauncey. She's putting together a TikTok move for us. What's the plan, Chauncey? Are you there?
Well, in case, is Chauncey here? She may
not. You want to tell us, Ellen?
Absolutely. We've already identified the TikTok dance. And Chauncey will be working with us to, as soon as the weather gets good enough to go to the park, I think we'll do it in the park. It's super simple. I spent hours looking for the right TikTok, and it got approved by Chauncey. So that's something we can tell our young people to try to make it go viral. That's the aim of the TikTok game. You put them up on, and they just keep sharing and sharing. And I think we have a chance at that. So stay tuned. It's coming soon.
We'll be advertising. We'll be advertising Grandpas United internationally. We'll have like 8 million views.
Oh, there, Chauncey's back. Okay, Chauncey. We were talking about the TikTok video.
Yeah, sorry. I was listening to the whole thing. My hands were busy at the same time. Yeah, the TikTok video looks great that Ellen found it, and it's really a good one. I think it'll be really fun.
Okay.
We're excited.
There's not a lot of movement. It's an easy one.
Gentle. Nick, feedback?
It sounds exciting. My daughter, who is the same age as the presenter, is 32. She works for Netflix. She has a phenomenal job. And I love to hear that Netflix is a big, media thing, because it keeps her salary coming in. But maybe we could do something at the library, Ellen and Chauncey, where we could sit and watch on the big screen and actually see one of our mentees play a game or do an actual interaction game with somebody who's their level, because we don't know what we're doing. But
So you saying you want to learn how to play Fortnite?
No, I don't want to really learn that. at all. I'm satisfied with NCIS 3 hours, but I'd like to see how it interacts and what happens.
Oh, I see. Yep.
So I'm familiar with it.
All right, well, that may be part of the grandpa gaming group. Nino, any feedback?
Yeah, by the time I learn Fortnite, they'll be on to God only knows what. You know, they move. I watch our grandkids, and they move so fast on this stuff. I can't imagine any part of my body on a whatever that remote thing is moving as fast as they can move it. So I think what Nick is saying, you know, if we could get online as a group and show them that we're interested in what they're doing. But I personally think if I attempted to try to do Fortnite with them, they would get frustrated watching me and lose interest. I think the other way around is watching them, showing our interest in them, might be a good way.
Appreciate the feedback. Good. Dennis? You're on mute.
Is there anybody interested in a Candyland? Because that's about where my learning curve is. Chutes and ladders, Candyland, and it's great stuff. Thank you, Austin, for the presentation. It was great. There is just so much to learn, and I think we can work at it definitely. I like the idea of the video, and but there are sometimes when I just feel depressed about all this, and oh no, not this, not that, and of course the social issues that come up on the negative side sometimes, which are really not good for teens.
Yeah,
Well,
teens
this may be
teens
the
and
first.
beyond.
Go ahead, Austin.
I was just gonna say, yeah, not good for teens and beyond. You know,
Right.
that's larger than just their generation.
Yeah.
Ashok has the question.
You know, a couple of years ago, I know that the city council had a proposal that they turned down, and it sounded like it was a theater where you could watch people play, video games, and they thought that it was going to be like a pinball parlor, and they turned it down because they're, the mindset was in like the wrong technology. It was kind of weird, but I think maybe having sort of an expeditionary force of grandpas to check out Fortnite or what have you, and or just watch the gamers and see what that's all like. So
Ashok,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Quick question, Austin. The Gen Zs, how are they getting information nowadays about current events within their city, county, state, national, international? Where are they getting that from?
I think it's on social media. It's all on social media. I don't think they're getting any local information. They're not learning about what's going on in the town. I mean, generally speaking, I think a lot of it is what they see on social media, which is more, national.
Other comments, Doug?
Jim,
Nick?
something. I don't know if you saw, but last week I went to the ribbon cutting of Fifth Dimension VR on Church, right across from the building department. It's a virtual reality studio with like 6 or 8 different booths that you go in. I've never done anything. I don't know. Austin probably knows about it. But I went in and they let me try this one thing called walk the plank. And you go up in an elevator, 37 stories. It feels exactly like you're going up in the elevator with this stuff on. And you walk a plank and you think like you're at the edge of the building walking this plank. I mean, and they had all different things. Tom Roach did one where he was shooting a bow and arrow. But I don't know, how does that fit into all of this other stuff, Austin?
So that's virtual reality. So that's just, I mean, that's kind of like the modern day arcades. You know, it's not something they necessarily have at their home. Some kids do. But yeah, virtual reality where you're putting a headset on and
Yep.
experiencing content that way. That not every kid has that, but some kids do. So let me say most kids in this generation have either seen someone try it or have tried it themselves. I would guess.
We all ought to go over just for a day trip and try it. So just so we're have the experience, because it really blows your mind.
Yeah, maybe we have a grandpa event there. We can talk with them. Any other feedback?
Glenda?
Hi, I just want to share my experience being that I have a teenager and he does play Fortnite. He's now 16, but 2 years ago when they're 14, like all of his friends, you know, they were playing and there was a lot of misbehaving, you know, in the park, like, you know, they were staying up very late, barely, you know, not sleeping at all. And we also, the parents that we communicated were four of them. We saw elevated charges in our accounts, like they were spending, you know, like buying stuff and, you know, a couple of times, you know, just doing that. So right now they're still playing, but it's not, you know, as they were doing before. But you know that was kind of the behavior that we were dealing at that time. You know, we are teenagers. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Glenda. We appreciate it. I'm wondering, Austin, have you done sessions like this I'm just curious, with young people's parents, or does the school ever do anything like that to bring quote the older generation or parent or grandparent up to date? I thought it was an excellent presentation. I'm just curious what happens.
Nothing this official. This is definitely the I mean, I'll talk to parents, but usually it's more of a one-on-one kind of a thing. Like a parent will send their kid to one of my classes, and then I'll talk to them on the phone afterwards, and we'll talk about these kind of things. But yeah, nothing like this, and certainly not with the teachers or anything like that.
Yeah, interesting. Because I thought your presentation was very good. It wasn't like condemning any of this. I mean, it was just, to me, it was learning about it and understanding and looking for a way to work with it. I really appreciate that. So before we wind up, John, any other comments or suggestions which we'll follow up on?
Well, I think, you know, we have a number of leads to go, you know, from here. You know, I really like the idea of seeing whether we could have a team of grandpas, you know, investigating some of these games. And I mean, it's sort of a way of providing materials, you know, so we can, you know, points of reference. So when we talk with the mentees, or you know, even our grandkids, you know, we have, you know, something from their world. So, you know, I think that would be a good thing to do. And I really like this idea of, you know, a road trip to, you know, the virtual reality. And I think that sounds like a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. Let me just ask if any other, James, did you want to add anything?
I think Martin does too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in an unusual situation in that I don't own a smartphone and I don't text. And there was a reason for it. In my previous career, which was in advertising, that pretty much ended when Atari Video Games, my client went out of business. And I had a chance to see just the devastating impact that had, not only in terms of billings lost, but all of the other executives at the agency would come in, whether they were on Atari or not, and they would use our game room, and the entire performance of the whole ad agency went down the tubes. So I decided, for my next career, which I ended up owning an investment advisory business, I just decided that it would be best to stay away from that. And I just retired a few months ago. My question is, is it really that important for me to reorient myself to enter this world, or is it possible that kids will just accept that I have this different background, but an interest in them?
No, any comment on that?
You are free to be who you are.
There you go. I agree. That's your choice.
But it may hold you back in a communication network. You don't have grandchildren, I guess, do you?
Grandpa's United, but my grandchildren are little kids.
Well, they're going to get pretty soon where they're going to want to text with you. And I know I have a 14-month-old grandson. Every day he FaceTimes with my wife and I because they live in Brooklyn. And if you don't have these capabilities, you would miss out on those things. So I think there's some benefit. You don't want to be totally horse and buggy days. So it might be worth it for you to learn a few of it and not be so resistant.
Appreciate the feedback.
I'm expecting that to happen, by the way, but I'm in no rush for
it. You're going to dragged in kicking and screaming, right?
Exactly.
We'll be ready to support you, Martin, whatever way you go. James, you want to say anything, James?
Yes. Thank you, Austin. It was a great performance and I learned a lot, and I'm still learning to do things, but it was interesting. I'm learning how to use the email better and FaceTime and everything else better.
I know you are. We've worked together.
We did.
Good to see you.
You too. I
Very
learned
good.
from you a lot of stuff. I'm still learning.
Irvin,
Yeah,
anything you want-
Austin.
Yeah.
Thanks, James.
Austin, I thought it was very interesting, Austin, your presentation. My thing is, they move so fast. You come back 2 weeks from now, this Fortnite might be obsolete. They don't last. Number one, they keep moving. And I just want to say this, Dave, my mentee does the same thing. I only see the top of his head. It's got to be something. That's got to be some kind of signal.
Herb, let's do this.
Yeah, there you go. There it is.
There you go.
There it is. I'll get that this afternoon. But I enjoyed
Austin,
it. And,
That's it.
Very
Just do the same thing right back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Austin, anything you want to add in conclusion, or if Brian, you're here, we really appreciate, but maybe any concluding statement for the grandpas?
Jonathan Shear had his hand up. I don't know.
Oh, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just a little concerned about these games, that they seem to be a gigantic time sink. You hear about so many kids at sea also. So many kids just seem to spend their life just fiddling around with their cell phones online, not actually doing anything. And it's not the same as when we were kids. We would spend our lives running around on the playground, running around on a baseball field. At least we got, it was a big time waste, but we got some exercise. These kids just sit there, fiddling around. And I'm not sure I want to jump in and do the same thing just for companionship.
Okay, that's fair. Austin, what do you advise parents or grandparents?
Everything in moderation. I think screen time is a real thing, and kids do need to get outside. I forced that on myself. Like you can't sit on a computer all day. You gotta get outside and do stuff. With that said, it's not these kids playing Fortnite. There really is skills that they're learning. They're working together. Usually it's like squads that they're in. So there are real skills that they can apply to real life that they're learning. But yeah, generally speaking, they shouldn't be playing more than, a couple hours a day at most, with a game like that.
Great. John, anything you want to add in conclusion?
Well, I think DeWitt has a comment.
Oh, DeWitt.
Well, I had an announcement or a request. I was on the New York Fathering Conference. That's why I was unable to get on earlier. But Brother Charles Morgan, who's part of us, had asked a request of the grandpas that their grandpa unit and their Port Chester Youth Bureau will be having a trip to Albany. It's an Afro-American, Latino, and Asian conference day in Albany. And they have 15 seats that are available, and they do need a couple of chaperones. And he requested through the grandpas if anyone was interested. Brother Charles Morgan of Port Chester, just give him a call and make the arrangements if you so desire.
We'll send out a note about that. And I'm wondering, before we conclude, Ellen, anything update?
Thank you everyone for coming. We've got a lot of interesting perspectives and opportunities to investigate technology with our mentees. We do have the mentoring group this Friday at 9:30 and mentor steering group the day before at 9:30. So I'll be sending those announcements out. Everything else is on track. Thank you so much for coming. We'll be sending out more info. Austin, how will you make this recording available for others?
I can send it over.
Great.
Okay, great.
I think it'd be good to be able to share it. And Austin, thank you so much for today. And John, thanks for setting this up.
Hey, well, Austin is a great guy to work with, and he certainly, is dealing with the, he's sort of in the ground zero with, the kids coming into the library. So, it's a great thing. And thank you so much, Austin.
Happy to help. Happy to help. Thank you all.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And maybe we'll have you back for Grandpa University, a second class here.
That sounds
There
good.
you go. All right.
All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Good day. Excellent.